这就不是做牛米长，做的什么什么那就。把个当个中度什么多，东巴都就讲了什么罗，对呢，讲的的什么这什么，对呢，讲的就像是说全部都把见到什么老瓜子吧，这个刚来的就见南昌的东巴公说吧，东巴一个之中啊，这个么可能。用的那家就多不人教那边用的那东尼家多不人教那用的家就家多不人教这用的东尼家多不人教里基用的家多不人教以及用的东尼家多不人教对呢用的家专门我这个装用是的讲现在用是多不人教对了把到马里熊微信他们把这的用是特别那个网络送什么送什么就等于看。学当当当，找当那当都不过吧，都都不如别把我的那没别什么样儿了，全部头把研究地上的这比怎么了，特别话的得到他们认同。西门他们别什么样刚到这结巴的他们就讲通，得到个理解那么明白样些，所对那标准的记。对呢。
There are many merits related to the faculty of the eye which teaches in the Lotus Sutra, but it seems that the merits of my eye faculty are gradually diminishing.
Tene chundan de jiti tsizib japan da ta kwap sar to korji we sam ji ba gang jim do den dan cha jang le lo me ber rap cha ba de yong da nga le nyon na yong dan ta ma ja ja yi de yim na kan dan zan na ti na mu mu zhen ma me da nyo ba me jang tak ber je pa da ma le shong wa yi de yi sha yi mu di na jik ten kam da tham che jang shen nam che ba rap tam thong 선보르르 탐쳤던 코로 이게 장팀 통대들 때 대전강 너무 잡아 아다 점조도 좀 통버런 여러 우도 나르면여 그거 땅도 비스르 네바 담바티는 금통때 샤이문의 된다고 다동대단 라이 뭐가 매베시바 마연노 대샤이 먹기여러 대다 때들은 여러와이 스타버 준도 존장장 리기워 모디 주지 남전도 양도 버탄장장 더버 샤더 나르 나비용도 나 동 니게 보대도 양 단대 동섬지 동진본지 땡기 감 나르메 비sem전 여러 침보라 특바 양치도 특비세모라 특바 만초드네 시도는 그다는 몽보강숑 완더스타테 올람보치 다금 티 다금 르가모 다음 발랑가 다임 리 다금 샹티 다금 응위 다금 냥은지 다금 지비 다금 동거 다금 지리 다금 니 다금 세무 다금 얼 리 다금 르모 다금 지비 다금 미지 다금 미지 다금 치기 다금 부모 다금 주지 다금 주마인비 다금 대위 다금 동원지 다금 시비 다금 Pabi dagam, yata gongwi dagam, yata mongwi dagam, lei dagam, nojinji dagam, tzi dagam, lama inji dagam, kardanga dagam, magam, ji dagam, tochi chenpo dagam, mei dagam, mama inji dagam, mei dagam, chi dagam, longa dagam, zhonga dagam, zhongkirji dagam, gelonga dagam, nyanduji dagam, rangjirji dagam, shangchu sanhui dagam, dengshabi dagam, 동섬지 동진문 직된지 감지 능나 자 지숑와 저니바데 탐지냐 나용보 타머바 용서도바데 투데 레지글 나와 모드 모기 데 셈전 데다랑 데다가 자르크 랍더 또고소 셈전 데다 데다가 거 넘버 또고 넘버임지 도 나용보 타머바디 셈전 데다가 데다가 자남투 장데 나용보 라자 데다가 감지 지진바 먹노노 또 떡버진도 엄송바 상저 선화 전부 데 나용보 데다가 투버 Jerde rezil hier navi mumbrum job jomdan ki tirk chipka tsarne tejon shabi tirk do sonner tomber jan tirk chipka tsar to tin nayon bote tamar badar nyoba mejan tagbaran jerwadan de jigtenji kamda da mali bar na namba mangbu jate nam yang thu de ngawaje dan janam da bang wa lang tang na kala ba shang ta wa lang wa dang na le da da大当郎金大哥这样多，将相有功乐业这样讲， da tamba tena tela chakba meda kangda kangna sala yang sarmaya ba shivat niji me ye jar nama to lai jadang lai yang nama jang jig jang yit to gung war tak bara je ba me ta ka jar nam dang chi tang na mo ja yang te jna to redang pu na kang ne te to dang ka shir ma sha kala panga dang sha nama kang ta ga chang chang 想想第个当得到南极站那么的都说你那等那等个更牛完是那么是大一站那么的，自己等个这个年把一也到南极站上对上都他们人的养猪能力把站上对的对上说到那去那么的对上的站那么他们这的土地这把没的蹲住建立等那盘层的嘛西北站那么更人吧那么。Number that Janam Mamboto, Tinan, Dixian Theatre 2, Lagan, Sambin, Jitin, Laneba, Ganda Goman, down the Gosra, Panzantona, Dark the Kamjan, Batit Mali, Tamchiteto, so there was a Tamba, Rapshone, Kirun, Ganda Katon, Shibadan, Cordinana, Chutun, Gayan, Batita, Teta Giant started the two, Jitin Kamder, Shanchus, and Wakan, Katon, Tajan, Shijan, Panzan, the Churnayanta. 做不是刚学吧，得到这那么难把他的头像是像黄东的刚正吧，上级中等的呢卡路比尔，可能那样穷就刚松，把地区的呢对头，那么眼前当的这笔债，东什么今呢让他们他们是拿南路大当学路大那一讲，甚至跟个这个忙上哇，甚至跟你这那么推荐的讲，我讲的。那玩意儿把没得黄包三项那当那讲，那有黄包他们得咱么，日子还能办嘛些，他们那玩的点的点，这边刚个多的中啊呢，得用的当那点着点着，大不了真的做呢，大不了真的做呢，样像就生活全部出去那么真的，顿他们看顿他们一件这个么那，你用的那假当单讲里，你黄包用是大不了。 这地呢，王波用大个把地，那王波，大把地东什么地东，全部就等于干嘛？像那这么王波有办的他的，日语这个么也都公布，这个么也都么这个没都，那么他的别真的他的，你没都个当嘛。 了嘎当咱把嘎当家那是机制南疆错入起来这边没到那么蒙不知南疆要做点的大的。 巴拉当、巴马当、格马达当、格马达、嘎波那么就知道讲做了，没多当这位像那么蒙不，当这位只那么讲做点的大的咱当，大马人大马当、亚布当、阿嘎里之间不那么讲做了，不那么他的不讲东巴那些那的把他们之间做的，他们之间习俗，甚至只那么蒙不做点的大的，阿拉伯些当、大当、瓦朗当、拉里当、西吉，只那么讲做了，当初建立是从着中那么蒙不的，立即只那么讲做。 基本上文明机立即只能讲错误，七个当文物立即只能讲错误，咋当像给巴当慢当那他个人不能的不只能讲错误，这样的不是错的，这样的不是西，莫讲这得个样没出过，得你不样没就了，听到那都现在样立只能讲的错的，庸俗多了只能讲错误，没多曼达拉清波当满节卡全部那么一直讲，这那么讲就错误，he agar shema dang zandan ji shema ta ki zhen nam jiang cuo ru li me dok ta de ba ya dong zhen dang jiang cuo ru de de ge men nam jiang meng nam jiang xi zuo li ji zhen nam jiang cuo de de da de li wong bu ya xin ji li ji zhe cuo ru na ber jia ri kang zang na zhe jiang gam ge shu ba gam chu zang li im den na sim shi zang sim ji har nam la chu dong ba gam zhe ga yu shi ji mo car ji zhe shi ba nam jiang xi zuo li ve jian nam ji su li ji zhe nam jiang错入里文末南极当里充满南极里极之南疆错入，还有热闹南极里极之南疆错入，还有热闹嘛南极里极之南疆错入，这都给讲我们这个像你不是门脚，我们这个像你不是门脚，我们这个像你不是门脚。
Don't fall asleep.
남장 디크비 세모르다야 스케바 셈chen 데다 걸리지 남장 초로 청버리 길하 남장 청바 쳔불리 길해 남장 초로 남장 더다비 리리 탐치 길리지 남장 초로 냥도 당상제다 장수상화도 대전서바다 그렇게 남장 초 남장 초로 대전서바다 단지 남장 초로 대전서바다 좀방도 버도 산기 데다 강나지바 데랍도 시소 디네 원보데다 저 남바몬보데다 그 멈춰바데 냠바가 노버지라요 메도 되어도 네트데다 데 잔탁바라요 여르데 데다 잠바 냠바라 여르와 메도
It feels like a mosquito bite. Are there any mosquitoes? No, right? Here. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, please generate the supreme bodhicitta before we start today's teaching. Today we will continue teaching the Lotus Sutra. Today I'll share something with you. In the records of reflection in the shadows, there's an account about Master Dixian. This story is quite simple. When he was 28 years old, Master Dixian, as you all know, when he was 28, while teaching the Lotus Sutra in Hangzhou, on one occasion he entered into meditative concentration. When he emerged from that samadhi, as it says in the records of reflection in the shadows, long time ago, I read the records of reflection in the shadows quite extensively, but now I've forgotten some of it. It said that lotus flowers grew from his tongue. From that time onward, he attained the samadhi of eloquence. His unobstructed eloquence and wisdom became thoroughly accessible. From then on, much of his Dharma teaching did not come from diligent effort or contrived wisdom, but flowed naturally from effortless compassion and wisdom. Therefore, throughout his life, he taught the Dharma continuously without interruption. Such story existed in the history. Of course, in the many accounts we've discussed before, after those who preserved the Lotus Sutra passed away and were buried in the earth, there are many accounts of lotus flowers growing from the place of their tongues. This particular type of occurrence might be somewhat rarer, but Master Dixian had such an experience. In any case, reading the Lotus Sutra should bring about many inconceivable and extraordinary merits that are difficult for us to imagine. So when we accept the Mahayana teachings, when we study the Mahayana Dharma, we should learn to understand this. Right now, I may not have the capacity to fully embrace all of its content because my wisdom is limited, as we all know, whether it's astronomy and geography, worldly matters, or the workings of the mind or external material phenomena. Our understanding is actually quite limited. Therefore, we shouldn't place too much trust in the narrow wisdom of our conceptual, discriminating mind. We shouldn't rely on it excessively. Just as the Sutra of 42 chapters teaches, don't put too much trust in your conceptual mind. We should approach the teachings in this way. Today, we're teaching the chapter on the benefits obtained by an expounder of the Dharma. It seems we also taught a chapter on Dharma teachers earlier. When we taught that earlier chapter, we mainly discussed the merits of the Lotus Sutra and the various merits that Dharma teachers obtain. We talked extensively about rejoicing in these merits. Now, this chapter on benefits mainly teaches about the Lotus Sutra. Whether we preserve it, teach it to others, or recite it, the one who teaches or recites it will gain extraordinary merits in their 6 faculties: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. They obtain extremely abundant merits in these areas. Of course, some of these merits we might be able to accept, while others we currently cannot even imagine. But there are indeed inconceivable merits, so we should still accept these teachings as the Buddha's Vajra words and listen attentively. During the listening process, do your best. I'll probably teach for about an hour or 50 minutes or 55 minutes, at most 1 hour. Right now it's 8:25 when we begin. If I haven't finished by 9:25, you may raise your hand or leave on your own. I'll strive to finish within 1 hour. During this time, unless there's a special circumstance, I hope everyone will listen to the teaching, because yesterday we just discussed some accounts about how even for just a brief moment, if someone has done no virtuous deeds in their entire life but has simply listened to one teaching session on the Lotus Sutra, perhaps their life will undergo a great transformation for that person. So now many people attach importance to the benefits of this life and future lives. They also value these greatly. But there are differences in this regard, because some people who deeply believe in cause and effect, they may place great importance on future lives. But those who don't quite believe, who have half faith and half doubt, may perhaps attach great importance to this present life. So I often encounter many elderly practitioners from the Tibetan region, whether monastics or lay practitioners. They truly do place great importance on future lives. When comparing this life with future lives, they always feel that we mustn't create too much negative karma in this life. We must create virtuous karma. Otherwise, experiencing suffering in samsara throughout future lives would be an extremely frightening thing. They have deep faith and no doubt about this. Therefore, in many of their actions, comparatively speaking, they don't particularly concern themselves with this present life. Actually, indeed, when we look at the long term, for people with wisdom, looking at things from a long-term perspective, caring about future lives is also very important. The Lotus Sutra contains teachings on two aspects. One relates to the benefits we gain in this present life, and also the benefits throughout all future lives. Today we'll continue teaching with what the Buddha told, Bodhisattva Satata Samitabhyukta. Here we have Bodhisattva Sadaparibhuta and Bodhisattva Satata Samitabhyukta. Bodhisattva Satata Samitabhyukta is extremely diligent. Day and night, every single day and night, when young and when old, he was always a very diligent person. Unlike some of our Dharma friends who, when they are diligent, are extremely diligent, but when they are not, they become extremely lax. That is not ideal. We should aim for steady, long-term diligence. Of course, some people truly have no choice because of physical limitations. For example, when I went to Mount Wutai a while ago, I heard that everyone was quite tired. After leaving Mount Wutai, many people slept for several days. Then when we went to Thailand was even more exhausting. After back from Thailand, many people slept there for several days. They were too exhausted. As for me, I continuously leave one group of people there to rest, then move to another group. They keep resting while I continue on. Comparatively speaking, sometimes I think it's not exactly diligence, but indeed it's training developed over many years. Many of you can probably rest a little before class. My schedule before class is also packed full. After class, some of you can also rest, but I probably have many meetings, this matter, that matter. But this is probably because my karmic destiny isn't so good. There's no other way. I don't blame anyone else. Each person has their own life circumstances. This isn't anything particularly praiseworthy. But indeed, some people often say, I'm serving, I'm too tired, I don't have time right now. Sometimes I feel that when I measure things by my own schedule, there should be some time for study and reflection, reading or practice. There should be some time available. The key is how you use your time. This is also very crucial. Now let's continue with the teaching. The Buddha addressed Bodhisattva Mahasattva Satata Samitabhyukta, saying, if sons and daughters of a virtuous family preserve this Lotus Sutra, whether they read it or recite it, whether they read it aloud or memorize it or explain it to others, or if some people copy it, then what will these people gain? They will gain 800 merits of the eye faculty, 1,200 merits of the ear faculty, and another 800 in this sequence, merits of the nose faculty, then 1,200 merits of the tongue faculty, 800 merits of the body faculty, and also 1,200 merits of the mind faculty. In this way, with these 6 faculties, through long-term recitation and preservation, one gains so many merits. Then these merits adorn their 6 faculties. This person's own 6 faculties will become purified. Therefore, those who preserve and recite such a sutra will have all their faculties completely purified. The power of the Dharma is also inconceivable, and if our minds are focused, we truly do obtain great merit. This chapter mainly teaches that those who preserve the Lotus Sutra have very pure minds, very clear minds. For this reason, they gain many merits, so they're called Dharma teachers. It seems the commentary on the Lotus Sutra also explains that those who preserve the sutra must have minds that are pure and single-minded, forever leaving behind laziness, always progressing without retreat. Only then can they be called Dharma teachers. This text explains that those who preserve the Lotus Sutra have minds that are pure and single-minded, focused. They will leave behind laziness and indolence. Such people only progress and never regress. So I think those of us attending these teachings are also like this. The number of people attending doesn't decrease but increases. This is also a good thing. Originally, I thought at the beginning there would definitely be many people, and then gradually the number might decrease. In the end, would only one person remain? If only one person remained, we could have a nice outing together. If there are too many people, the expenses become quite large. Generally speaking, in the past, after listening to a great teaching, everyone would joyfully make offerings to the Dharma protectors, hold tsok offerings, and host feasts. This was also the tradition in the Tibetan region in the past. So when the Lotus Sutra teaching is completed, if there are few people, I'd like to do something nice. But there might be no way now, because more and more people are coming. But that's also very good. Our 6 faculties become pure, planting different kinds of virtuous seeds in these 6 faculties. We may not necessarily possess all capacities and virtuous roots fully, but at least we're planting many, many virtuous seeds. The Buddha told Bodhisattva Sattata Samhita Bhiyukta, saying, these sons and daughters of a virtuous family with the pure physical eyes given by their parents first, here for each faculty. Beginning with the physical eyes, each of the 6 faculties is discussed one by one, because in previous lives they planted seeds in their mind streams. When born from their parents, their physical eyes are all pure. They can see, just like Shariputra in the past. When in meditation he could see 10,000 worlds. Maudgalyayana could see 8,000 worlds, but they could only see them when in meditation. When they emerged from meditation, they couldn't see them. Or we could say these arose through their practice, through the 6 supernatural powers. In other words, they arose from the state of the 4th dhyana. They weren't produced during our ordinary conduct or in a neutral state of mind. There may also be such cases. But here, it's not produced through the power of practice. Rather, it arises from their previous life's good connections and karma. They can see all the mountains, forests, rivers, and oceans, both within and beyond the great manifold cosmos, down to the Avachi hell, and up to the summit of existence below the highest peak of the formless realm. All the sentient beings in between, including their karma, their fruition, and their places of abode, all can be seen clearly. So those who listen to the Lotus Sutra in the past may naturally have in this very life something akin to divine sight, but it's not truly divine sight. Divine sight, according to what we teach when we study the Abhidharmakosha, our precious Guru often said not to casually speak of supernatural powers. Divine sight is not easy to attain at all. To have divine sight, one must definitely have achieved the 4th dhyana. As for the 4th dhyana, for us sentient beings in the desire realm, generally speaking, those who study the Abhidharmakosha all know it's extremely, extremely difficult. It's not easy at all, so you don't need to think, today I saw something or other, or there's a ghost following behind you. Now, in our study groups, things are a bit better. Indeed, both in our Larung Gar and in our study groups, we study quite properly. Generally speaking, there's none of this talk about all sorts of supernatural powers or telling various lies. We don't have any of that. Why does the Buddha say that among the 4 root precepts, the first is great falsehood? What is great falsehood? I didn't see it, but I say I saw it. I don't have supernatural powers, but I say I do. This is a very serious transgression. It's one of the 4 root precepts. precepts that are violated. So among our lay practitioners in the past, it was also like this. Some people with certain teachers from the Tibetan region or with other so-called teachers, it seems they often like to talk about their own supernatural powers. Sometimes it's okay to mention a dream you truly had, to describe some dream experiences. But Master Jigme Lingpa also said it's best not to speak about all your dreams. Otherwise, many auspicious signs of attainment from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will never manifest again from that point on. Therefore, it might not be necessary to do so. When we study Buddhism, it's best if, in the worldly context, we treat Buddhist study as a systematic educational curriculum, treat it as a genuine way of being human, cultivating goodness, or as a supreme educational philosophy. Then people in the world can easily accept it. If we talk nonsense, constantly telling people about ghosts, spirits, this and that, this is actually very difficult. If we can't even see many things right before our eyes, then ghosts and spirits are even more difficult to see. Therefore, I also hope that everyone in our Buddhist community do not speak about such mystical and superstitious things in the future. If we do so, people around us will all become like that. This indeed has some impact on genuine study, reflection, and practice, including one's own mind stream. Patrul Rinpoche also taught in the words of my perfect teacher that if you love to speak about such things, and if your mental state is relatively fragile, so-called malevolent spirits and various ghosts and spirits will attach themselves to this person. In the end, temporarily speaking, they might appear to have some supernatural power, a bit of what seems like spiritual sensitivity, so-called special abilities like that. But this won't last for a long time. Therefore, we must be careful in the Buddhist community. But indeed, if you previously practiced the Lotus Sutra, perhaps you truly will know these things. From the Avachi hell below up to the peak of existence above, all these causes and conditions can be known. Oh, in your past life you killed such and such a person. I've seen some doctors take someone's pulse and say, oh, your negative karma is very serious. Did you kill chickens before? Your illness isn't easy to cure. You should immediately go participate in a Vajrasattva retreat and recite the Vajrasattva mantra 400,000 times. Then come back and let me look at your mouth. Then I'll look at your tongue. Some doctors are indeed like this. Perhaps they can still know it. But if they truly know, they wouldn't need to check the pulse, right? They could just tell you directly. Otherwise, through this method, perhaps their supernatural power or mind-reading ability is transmitted to their mind through the body's meridians. Without touching the person's hand, perhaps it's not particularly clear. Maybe there are such cases, but I still maintain pure perception. At this time, the Bhagavat proclaimed this meaning in verse again. If in the great assembly with a fearless mind one proclaims the Lotus Sutra, no matter what others say, you must boldly and fearlessly teach this Lotus Sutra. When you teach the Lotus Sutra in the future, especially in the beginning, there will be some obstacles. The interdependent origination is inconceivable, so there may be some, but everyone don't retreat. With a fearless mind, you should continue teaching fearlessly as I do, teaching this Lotus Sutra. The merits described in this Lotus Sutra, you can listen to them. They're extremely vast. Why are they so great? This person obtains 800 excellent merits of the eye faculty. That is to say, the merits of the eye faculty. These merits adorn your eye faculty, and ultimately your eyes become pure. In the past, it was said that reciting and reading the Lotus Sutra brings many, many merits. As for these merits, with the eyes given by one's parents, one can see all things inside and outside the Trikiliocosm, including Mount Meru. Mount Meru should be one of the 7 golden mountains, according to the Abhidharma Kosha. Then Mount Sumeru, Mount Kakravada, and many others, as well as mountains, forests, oceans, rivers, and so on. From below the Avicii hell up to the peak of existence, all the minds and karma of all sentient beings are completely clear at a glance. All can be completely perceived. This kind of perception is not obtained through the divine eye. If obtained through the divine eye, it would be obtained through practice and other causes. This is obtained through the merit of the Lotus Sutra, through the power of the physical eye, because that's how it's obtained. This teaches about the Lotus Sutra's effect on the eye faculty. Indeed, in the past, there have been many people with such special eye faculties. In the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, it's also mentioned that Nyaklo Tsawa Denzin Sangpo, when he was at Samye Chimpu with his physical eyes, at that time his physical eyes saw the deeds of great masters like Vimalamitra and Padmasambhava in India. Then he asked some great masters to go to India to welcome them to Tibetan area. The entire process is described very clearly. So through history and through present reality, there are indeed many inconceivable merits. Next, the Buddha tells Bodhisattva Satatasamita that if sons and daughters of a virtuous family preserve and recite this sutra, whether reading or reciting, explaining or copying, if they do so, they obtain 1,200 merits of the ear faculty. After the ear faculty becomes pure, they can hear throughout the trichiliocosm, from below the Avicii hell up to the peak of existence, all various kinds of sounds and voices, inside and outside, all can be heard very clearly. Of course, with this kind of ear faculty, they can hear when they want to and not hear when they don't want to. Otherwise, it might be quite troublesome. If they heard all sounds very clearly, but they probably need to, for example, on our computers, if you want to receive what kind of song or what kind of sound, there's immediately an operating system for that. So there must be a way to do this. So what sounds are mentioned below? Among animals, the sounds of elephant, horse, cow, and cart sounds. Carts aren't animals, but carts are mentioned here. Horse carts, ox carts, sheep carts, and now all kinds of carts. Actually, I don't know anything about cars. When we're often riding in cars on the street, many people riding in cars, whether lamas or lay people, say, "What car is that? What car is this?" I have no idea. I often ask, "What car is this? What car is that?" They seem to know very clearly. Perhaps they're very interested. What car is this? What car is that? When I see them on the road, I only know this is a truck, this is a tractor. As for many cars, I'm not particularly clear. I can't distinguish car sounds either. When some honk their horns, they can all hear it. Whose car sound is this? What kind? And so on. There are also crying sounds that can be heard clearly and sounds of sorrow. As for musical instruments, the sounds of conches, drums, bells, chimes, and in the human world there are laughing sounds, speaking sounds, male voices, female voices, boys' voices, and girls' voices. Then there are the sounds of the Dharma. In the Prasanapada, Dharma is explained as having three meanings. One is upholding the characteristics of things. For example, anything whatsoever, ultimately it is a dharma, upholding its characteristics. This is also a dharma. Another meaning is pulling beings out from the lower realms. This is also called dharma. And pulling them out from the 6 realms is also a dharma. It seems in chapter 17 of the Prasanapada, when introducing the concept of dharma, it says there are 3 meanings. So we often think, I'm going to transmit the dharma. When transmitting the dharma, what dharma are you transmitting? It's not just the true nature of things. Sometimes when we transmit the dharma, for example, if I'm in a school teaching about artificial intelligence or environmental protection, these might be upholding the characteristics of things. Whatever happens in the world, this can also be called dharma. But the true Buddha Dharma is when sentient beings are about to fall into lower realms and you pull them out, preventing them from entering the lower realms, or when a being is in the 6 realms and you cause them to generate renunciation, bodhicitta, and attain liberation, such sounds, such words, and such content. This is called Buddha Dharma. Dharma can be explained this way. Non-Dharma sounds, in contrast, are called non-Dharma sounds. Then sounds of suffering, sounds of joy, sounds of ordinary beings, sounds of noble ones, all can be heard, are all very good. As for me, if I had this ability, I'd listen to noble beings' voices every day and wouldn't want to hear ordinary beings' voices. Noble beings' voices probably have no afflictions. For ordinary beings, they just talk about trivial matters without much meaning every day. Then joyful sounds, sorrowful sounds, sounds of devas, nagas, and yaksas, gandharvas, and asura sounds, garudas, kimnaras, and mahoragas. There are also fire sounds, water sounds, wind sounds. Earth sounds aren't mentioned. Hell sounds, animal sounds, hungry ghost sounds, monk sounds, nun sounds, Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, Bodhisattva, and Buddha sounds. Anyway, In the trichiliocosm, all sounds inside and outside can all be heard. They haven't attained the divine ear, but with the pure ear faculty given by their parents, they can constantly hear these sounds. Moreover, they can distinguish these sounds and won't damage the ear faculty. The Tibetan text says they can distinguish very clearly but won't become attached or intoxicated. They also won't damage their ear faculty. If we heard so many sounds, we'd surely go deaf and damage our ear faculty. But they still have this ability. Actually, we can also hear a lot. Nowadays, if you open a computer, you can access the voices of many people around the world. As long as you search, perhaps Deva voices are a bit less common for the hell sounds. But sounds like those from hell can also be heard. All worldly sounds, such as university professors' lectures or Dharma teachers explaining the sutras, even lay people arguing at home. If you want to listen, you can hear everything. When searching online, you can hear it all. So, we've also obtained an ear faculty similar to theirs. The computer is also a skillful means for hearing the Lotus Sutra that doesn't damage the ear faculty. Perhaps it's like this. At this time, the Bhagavat again explained this principle to everyone in verse form. The pure ear faculty given by one's parents without defilement constantly hears all kinds of sounds in the trichiliocosm: elephant, horse, cart, and cow sounds, bells, chimes, conchis, and drums, zithers, harps, lutes, flutes, and pipes. Also pure singing voices. After hearing them, they don't become attached. When we hear something and listen repeatedly, wow, this song is so good, play it again, again. We become attached and infatuated, eventually giving rise to various afflictions. But generally, if arising from especially good past life conditions after hearing, one doesn't become particularly attached. Innumerable kinds of human voices can be heard and understood. They also hear celestial beings' voices, subtle melodies, and so on. Also male and female voices, boys and girls. Various sounds in mountains, rivers, and dangerous valleys, Kalavinka birds. These are often mentioned in Brahma sounds. Jivaka, jivaka. That should be the double-headed bird. It seems in Tibetan there's mention of peacock sounds. Is Ming Ming a peacock? In Tibetan there's a peacock. They can hear all of these. Also various sounds of suffering and pain in the hells. All kinds of extremely agonizing and painful sounds. Hungry ghosts oppressed by hunger, seeking food and drink. All these various sounds. Among the asuras, these asuras dwelling at the ocean's edge, when they speak to each other. At that time they emit especially loud sounds. Asuras are indeed their bodies are tall and their speech is too. Just now I saw someone below saying, "No matter what, I want to find Khenpo." Is this a reincarnation of an asura? I saw a particularly tall person. Then I quietly ran away under his armpit. This Dharma teacher abiding in this place can hear various sounds from afar without damaging the ear faculty. In all the worlds of the 10 directions, all the sounds of birds and beasts, including the cries of birds and wild beasts calling to each other, the Dharma teacher abiding in a certain place can also hear all of this. Just as in the biographies of many kings in the past, they also heard various different sounds of wild beasts and bird calls. To us it seems like that, but nowadays in the world there are also many people who can distinguish various different sounds of birds. Quite strange people. Many people think these are strange people. But actually everyone's past life karma from previous ripened results is not the same. Therefore there are all kinds of situations. Also, up to the Brahma heavens in the form realm, the Abhasvara and Shubhakritsna heavens, up to the peak of existence, all the celestial beings' languages can be heard. Do formless realm beings have language? They don't, right? They're constantly in meditation. They certainly have the habit of language. Perhaps they might talk to themselves, wanting to speak while in meditation. These can also be heard, right? The peak of existence. Up to the peak of existence, the sounds of speech and language. The Dharma teacher dwelling here can hear them all. The formless realm. The Abhidharmakosha really should be studied. Is there? What does it mean? Today's teaching is relatively simple. We can just go through the literal meaning. Also, when bodhisattvas recite this sutra and explain it to others, compiling its meaning, these sounds can also be heard. For this Dharma teacher, when some bodhisattvas are teaching the Dharma from far away, such as Manjushra Bodhisattva, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and so on, their sounds teaching in different Pure Lands can also be heard. Also, some Buddhas in the 10 directions of the world, when they teach sentient beings, teaching and turning the Dharma wheel in great assemblies, those who preserve the Lotus Sutra can hear it all. Generally speaking, when attaining the great path of accumulation in the Pure Lands of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, one can hear the sounds of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas teaching the Dharma, but here, without having attained such a high state, one can still hear, in the Trichiliocosm, all sounds inside and outside, from below the Avachi hell up to the peak of existence. All these sounds can be heard without damaging the ear faculty. Moreover, their ear faculty is very keen, able to distinguish the content of all sounds. This is also very important. Those who preserve the Lotus Sutra, although they haven't attained the divine ear, because of hearing the Lotus Sutra in past lives, they can also hear and possess such merits. In the Song dynasty, there was someone who wrote the combined treatise on the Lotus Sutra. In the combined treatise on the Lotus Sutra, it says there was a monk from India called Abhaya, fearless, without fear, fearless. When he came to China, at that time in Chang'an, the capital, the emperor was, it should be the Tang dynasty, during Emperor Xuanzong's reign. When he came to China at that time, the fearless monk wanted to. At that time, it seems the emperor had great faith in him. When he came to China, he said, I want to meet Vinaya Master Daok Suan. After met Vinaya Master Daok Suan, it seems the emperor acted as intermediary, issuing an order for Vinaya Master Daok Suan to meet the Indian monk as well. Nowadays, many monks from various countries visit each other in so-called exchanges. In the past, perhaps there were exchanges in realization. Now it's signing contracts and conducting ceremonies like that. At that time when they came, they were in the same place. Vinaya Master Daok Suan and Master Fearless were in the same place. At this time, Vinaya Master Daok Suan's conduct was extremely pure, whether eating, speaking, or never lying down at night like that. Master Fearless, on the other hand, ate and drank, and many of his behaviors didn't match Vinaya Master Deokshuan's at all, quite rough in some aspects. Then at night the two of them slept in one room. At that time Vinaya Master Deokshuan didn't really sleep and practiced continuously. Master Fearless slept, and after sleeping he snored. The next day he said, you snored yesterday and didn't let me practice properly. Then Master Fearless said, you weren't very good either. At that time you threw a little louse from your body outside. And that little louse was crying so much that I couldn't sleep all night. I had no choice but to snore. At this time, indeed, Vinaya, Master Daoxuan, had at that time thrown a little louse to the ground. He became afraid and immediately prostrated to Master Fearless. The combined treatise on the Lotus Sutra says that the ability Master Fearless brought with him, his ability to hear the sound of a small louse, was actually not the divine ear power. It should be his ear faculty purified by past life karma from his childhood. It's also explained this way. I saw it explained this way in the combined treatise on the Lotus Sutra. In the world, the situations of hearing sounds are all different, but they're not the same. Over 10 years ago, when I wrote The Tragic World, I also used a story about Vinaya, Master Daoxuan. At that time, it was said that Master Kuiji and he slept in one room. It was said that when the louse was thrown to the back, Master Kuiji couldn't sleep well. Perhaps Vinaya Master Daoxuan did indeed have quite a few lice on his body. With many Dharma masters, he didn't let them sleep. I don't know the specifics. History can verify it. generally when never lying down at night. Indeed, in the past, when we first came to the Larung Gar, we also didn't loosen our belts at night. At such times, around the waist area, lice were still easy to breed, especially when not loosening it at night. The best place for lice to dwell is around the waist. At that time, we do not have clothes to change, probably. We do not have conditions for bathing as well. So perhaps indeed Vinaya Master Daoxuan's behavior and such were related, but he still often threw lice away. Although he upheld the precepts very purely, he probably didn't care too much about throwing little lice. Perhaps sometimes when little lice bite you particularly fiercely, one still generates a little bit of aversion. For a Vinaya master, perhaps there's such a thing happened as well. In any case, there are such stories. Anyway, some great masters can also hear such very tiny sounds, including their sounds of suffering. They can hear them as well. After this, the Buddha told Bodhisattva Satata Samhita Bhiyukta that if sons and daughters of a virtuous family preserve and recite this sutra, reading, reciting, explaining, or copying, they obtain 800 merits of the nose faculty. With this pure nose faculty, they can smell all kinds of fragrances above and below, inside and outside the trichiliocosm, including some mentioned here: Sumana flower fragrance, Jati flower fragrance. Jati flower fragrance is jasmine flower fragrance. Sumana flower fragrance is pleasing flower fragrance. Then Malika flower fragrance, Kampaka flower fragrance. Kampaka flower fragrance seems to be golden flower fragrance. Patala flower fragrance, red lotus fragrance, blue lotus fragrance, white lotus fragrance, flower tree fragrance, fruit tree fragrance, sandalwood fragrance, aloes wood fragrance, also tamala leaf fragrance, tagara fragrance. It seems France has many perfumes. When we went there, I asked about it briefly. Over there they have particularly different flowers. Most of those flowers, they say some of them when sprayed on your body, at the beginning have one fragrance, in the middle another fragrance, after a while yet another fragrance, and at the end another fragrance. For example, if it can last 2 hours, during those 2 hours there are different fragrances continuously emitting, many fragrances. So many people nowadays, perhaps their advertising is particularly good. I don't know what it's like, but anyway, these are also fragrances. These fragrances, according to the Abhidharma Kosha, of course include foul fragrances and excellent fragrances. All are included here. Whatever kind of fragrance, if one has such a nose faculty, whatever scent, whatever fragrance can be smelled, as well as thousands and myriads of kinds of blended fragrances, including some powdered incense and some shaped like pills. In the past, in Dream of the Red Chamber, there were also some medicinal incenses made from various flowers. There are also some anointing fragrances applied to the body. Those who preserve this sutra, dwelling in one place, can distinguish and smell all of these. They also distinguish all the various fragrances of sentient beings, such as elephant fragrance, horse fragrance, cow fragrance, sheep fragrance. They all have different scents. Some people feel that cow fragrance and sheep fragrance are probably not pleasant, but they're still quite good. When I used to herd cattle, sleeping among several young calves at night, I slept particularly well, generally when it rained heavily and was especially cold, with several young calves all tied together. Sleeping in the middle of the calves was very comfortable. Also male fragrance, female fragrance, boy fragrance, girl fragrance, as well as grass, tree, and forest fragrances. All these fragrances, whether near or far, can be smelled. Moreover, they distinguish without confusion. Everything is distinguished very clearly. So those who preserve this sutra, although dwelling in this Saha world, can also smell all the fragrances of the heavens, including the Parijata flower, probably a flower's fragrance, also the Kovidara tree's fragrance, Mandarava flower fragrance, great Mandarava flower fragrance, also Manjusaka, which is Manjushra flower fragrance. Some of us say we brought this from Mount Wutai. This is Manjushra Bodhisattva's fragrance, but I don't know if it's real. The real Manjushra flower is at the south mountain area of Mount Wutai. At the south mountain there's a yellow one, but now many people say the one at our Larung Gar was brought from Mount Wutai at that time. Perhaps it is, hopefully it is. Also great Manjusaka fragrance, Manjushra flower fragrance, sandalwood fragrance, aloes wood fragrance, and various powdered incenses, as well as various mixed flower fragrances. Today I looked at my courtyard. There are about a dozen kinds of flowers, so fragrant, but women cannot come up. Some things are quite unreasonable for men and women. There are now disciplines at the Larung Gar. For some women, especially in many aspects, wherever they go, I hope everyone still observes the Academy's disciplines. In all aspects, no matter what, they should be observed. Whether our male monastics, Dharma teachers, or stewards or staff should clearly understand what disciplines the Academy has. Although since last year with demolishing buildings and this and that, some people indeed, perhaps they themselves don't understand or something, so we must definitely establish some boundaries. Otherwise, the Larung Gar won't be like an academy at all. In the past, for example, in the Han regions, there were also Buddhist academies, meditation centers, and some retreat places. Some people are not allowed to enter, tourists are not allowed to enter, lay people are not allowed to enter, householders are not allowed to enter. There are always signs indicating this. For our Larung Gar now, although in the construction process, probably in the women's area, there are also some, including their staff members and workers, but actual male lay people cannot go into the women's areas. This is our Buddhist Academy's rule. Of course, sometimes you might, including stewards, when we're listening to teachings. Male and female lay people are all separated. But I said before that when listening to teachings, it's not necessarily required to separate. Yesterday there was a lay woman who said their male steward said, "We lay women cannot sit here. What should we do?" I said, "You can sit there." Then she assertively ran to sit on the male lay people's side. So when we sit, in any case, especially we sit freely sometimes. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche also said before that in our Larung Gar, except for some special empowerments and special occasions, whether Dharma teachers, Khenpos, Khenmos, or lay practitioners, when everyone sits, we don't really separate them. If there are some special ceremonies in the monastics area, householders cannot sit. For example, in some special cases for some Dharma teachers, and others should pay attention. Otherwise, we seem to have very distinct hierarchies. Of course, the discipline for male and female monastics should be observed. Male and female monastics sitting mixed together is not good. I think for lay practitioners, especially lay practitioners who've come to the Larung Gar, there's also no particular need for such separation. But I think many people here should be quite clear about the disciplines. But most importantly, male areas and female areas, inside male dormitories and female dormitories, no matter what, we must pay attention. After arriving at the Larung Gar, whatever disciplines our Larung Gar has, everyone should be clear about them, must be clear. Just now I originally wanted to talk about my courtyard, but then I didn't dare talk about it. Discriminating thoughts arose again. Just now we were talking about those who preserve the Lotus Sutra. They can smell the fragrances on the bodies of celestial beings in the heavens. Also, for example, Chakra, if he's in the Sudarshana palace enjoying the excellent pleasures of the 5 desires, at that time the fragrance on his body can also be smelled. Also, if he's in the Sudharma hall teaching the Dharma to the Devas of Tusita heaven, he probably has different bodily fragrances in different settings. These can also be smelled. Also, when Chakra is playing in his gardens, at that time, his bodily fragrance can also be smelled. Also, others, including some Deva-putras and Devas, their bodily fragrances can be smelled from afar. In this way, successively up to the Brahma world, up to the peak of existence and above, all the bodily fragrances of celestial beings can be smelled very clearly. Moreover, the incense burned by the Devas, the fragrance of Shravakas, the fragrance on Pratyeka Buddha's bodies, and the excellent fragrance on the bodies of Bodhisattvas and Buddhas can all be smelled. Moreover, they know their locations and such. Although smelling these fragrances, the nose faculty won't be damaged or confused. The Tibetan text says they also won't become intoxicated. Some might become intoxicated when smelling, for example, the fragrances of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, or celestial beings. They might become intoxicated, but the Tibetan says there won't be intoxication. Moreover, they can also distinguish and explain to others. And their recollection has absolutely no errors whatsoever. They are extremely, extremely clear. It seems in Nagarjuna Bodhisattva's biography, there's also mention in the past Nagarjuna Bodhisattva seems to have been from another non-Buddhist tradition. Some biographies may differ. In one biography, it says at that time he was very, very young when he hadn't yet been weaned from his mother's milk. At that time, he heard a Brahman reciting the 4 Vedas, about 40,000 verses. But Nagarjuna Bodhisattva heard everything very clearly and comprehended their meaning. Later, when Nagarjuna Bodhisattva was very young, he became extremely famous. Together with his 3 companions, they mastered all the knowledge in the entire world. They were also very proud and thinking, in the present world, there's nothing we don't understand. We should go into the palace and enjoy the king's life. Then they thought of a method. Later, they learned some invisibility techniques where others couldn't see them. Then they sought out a very famous master. They said, "Can the 4 of us learn the knowledge of invisibility in your presence?" Then this master thought to himself, if I teach them, of course it would be good to make them my disciples. But after I teach them, these people are particularly famous and very intelligent. If after learning they ignore me, that wouldn't be good. I'll make some pills. Each time they need to use it, I'll give them these pills. This way they'll forever be my disciples. Each time they want to use it, they'll come to me for it. Then he made some invisibility pills. In the past, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also mentioned that in Larung there was a Lama who practiced invisibility techniques. When he practiced invisibility techniques, generally with invisibility techniques, everyone knew he was practicing. Then there was a very mischievous Lama who deliberately went in. He clearly saw him sitting there, but pretended to say, where did he go? Where did he go? I forgot this person's name. Anyway, it's definitely a true story. Then this Lama thought his invisibility had truly succeeded. After succeeding, later when they held a ceremony, he came out completely naked. But Nagarjuna Bodhisattva wasn't like this. At that time, that master began giving the 4 of them 4 pills. The 3 pills besides Nagarjuna Bodhisattva's. Indeed, at that time, how was it explained? Still don't know what the situation was. Anyway, Nagarjuna Bodhisattva immediately knew it was composed of 70 kinds of medicines. With just a smell, he knew what substances composed this pill. He knew everything immediately. Later, that master had no choice. He said, "Never mind, I know. I can make it myself. I knew from a smell." Then he returned it to him. Then the 4 of them ran into the palace and had relations with many queens. Later, many queens became pregnant. The king was very angry. Later, through fortune tellers, they realized there should be invisible beings present. Then the king issued an order ordering that the entire interior be shot through. They used a method of firing arrows to pierce everything inside. At that point, the 3 companions were unable to escape and were struck by the arrows. It seems that when the arrows were fired indiscriminately wherever they struck, his body you couldn't see it, yet in fact his body was still there. Later, all 3 of them died on the spot. At that time, Bodhisattva Nagarjuna ran behind the king because it was impossible for the arrows to strike the king. Then it was something like this probably, silently made a vow in his heart. If I escape this disaster, I will become a monastic. Later, Bodhisattva Nagarjuna did become a monastic and made great contributions to the Dharma. There is also such an account. So Bodhisattva Nagarjuna's power of discernment was indeed remarkable, although he smelled these fragrances and so on. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Larung Gar Badna Sodargye Larung Gar Badna Sodargye Larung Gar Badna Sodargye